Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, October the 4th, 2023. This video is going to be short and standalone. I don't have a special topic that I'm going to discuss. There are a number of topics that are coming up that are important and interesting to me. I'm thinking particularly of Slovakia, where there have been elections, and I really want to look at the horoscope of the current favourite to be the new Slovak Prime Minister, who is Robert Fico, and he's about to form a government, or hopefully, as far as he's concerned, he's going to form a government. Make things simpler if he can form a government, because then we can say, oh, well, he's the Slovak Prime Minister. But he's a Virgo, and I do want to look at his horoscope, but not today, not right now, because there's a load of other stuff I need to look at in terms of Slovakia that I want to put into one video. Another thing that I do want to mention, again, not here, but needs to be discussed in depth, is the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that took place in December 2020. You know, there's a tendency in astrology to look at a big event, maybe put a video up about it, and then just sort of forget it. It's gone. It's happened. So in December 2020, people were talking about the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. I think there was even an article in The Guardian about it. And then it just got dropped. It's happened. It's done. The event's over. Of course, it's not over at all. And that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, which was in the first degree of Aquarius, it's certainly not a one-day wonder. And, if you want to understand what's going on around us in our world and how the world is going to develop over the next 20 years, maybe even the next 150 years, or in fact 100, next couple of centuries, in fact, we do need to understand this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. It's certainly not a one-day wonder, and I do want to really focus on it, particularly as sort of relatively soon Pluto is going to be crossing the degree of that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. So it's all going to come back into focus, and we're going to have to start thinking about what it means for us. But as I said, there's no special topic today, so I'm just going to talk about today's astrology and the I Ching. So let me start by looking at the planets for today. And today is Wednesday, October the 4th, 2023. So no picture in the top right, just the chart. So what we see is that the moon is still in Gemini. So it's another day when there's plenty of variety, plenty to think about, plenty to talk about. Notice, if you look at this chart, that we're starting to get planets in air signs. We're starting to get a real air emphasis here. The moon is in Gemini, Sun is in Libra, Mars is in Libra, South Node is in Libra. Not quite so important, but sort of a month ago, we had no air at all. We had sort of, aside from the moon, we would have weeks and weeks on end with no air in the chart. Now we're getting some air in the chart. If you think about it, people are prepared to ask questions more now, I think. A couple of months ago, people took things at face value. Now people are thinking about alternative views. They're starting to sort of question the mainstream narrative more. Indeed, the mainstream is actually starting to question itself more, and so I think that is something positive. Also note that today Mercury is at 29-24 Virgo, so Mercury is about to leave Virgo. Now, if you're in Europe and Asia, Mercury will certainly remain in Virgo for all day. But if you're in Los Angeles, for example, or Seattle, Mercury enters Libra late this afternoon at 5:09 p.m. If you're in New York, it would happen at 8:09 p.m. So in the Americas, then this evening we notice a sign change. Mercury moving into Libra. We start to get a lot of stuff in air signs. So, Mercury in Libra, very different energy than Mercury in Virgo. Mercury in Virgo is certainly well placed, great position for Mercury, but, very analytical, focusing on the facts, can sometimes be a little boring. Mercury in Virgo in its own sign. Mercury is also in its own sign in Gemini. Mercury in Gemini is a bit more exciting, a bit more quicksilver than it is in Virgo. And so Mercury going into Libra. Mercury is starting to focus more on the social dimension. A lot of that energy is going into talking, conversation, wanting to make sure the balance is right. Mercury in Virgo is not afraid of causing upset if someone has got the facts wrong. If someone's got the facts wrong, Mercury in Virgo will be quite happy to say so. Mercury in Libra, wants to keep everyone happy. Might hold back on making observations about the facts, about details, that kind of thing. Also in this chart, we've got an exact conjunction between Mars and the South Node. You can see that it's there, 2457 Libra. So in astrology, the node means kind of different things. But particularly the South Node. In traditional astrology, the South Node was unfortunate. And the North Node was fortunate. The South Node was kind of the nature of Saturn. In Indian astrology, the South Node is something fairly compulsive and mindless. I'm not sure if the North Node is able to think a bit more in Indian astrology. But I think this idea that the South Node might be compulsive and mindless is probably quite useful, even when we look at it in Western astrology. It's a pull. It's something we're pulled into doing, and we just can't help ourselves. And that kind of leads into the karmic interpretation of the South Node. That it's connected with the past. Now that past might be yesterday, something we were doing yesterday and we realized we made a mistake. It could be something we did in our childhood or in our youth, but something which should have outlived its purpose, but we can't help ourselves. We keep going. It's a line of least resistance. And if you're into karma, it could represent previous incarnations, what we were doing in the past. We should have grown out of it, we should have developed out of it, but no. And so with Mars in the South Node, as I said yesterday and I think the day before, it's a temptation to sort of move in the wrong direction, to go back into past ways of behavior. But another interpretation of the node is it's simply about contacts. This is a view that the German schools of astrology, Alfred Witter, Reinhold Ebertin, talk about. They're not really so focused on karma. It's just about connections. It's a point of connection. So Mars on the south, Mars on the node, point of connection. You could literally say it. Association with soldiers, for example, because Mars is a universal significator of military people. Association with aggressive people. Mars is an aggressive planet. That's a very sort of simple way of doing it. So we need to look at who we are, we're meeting with. Now, there's a certain tendency in the German schools of astrology focusing on sort of midpoints. It's not really to differentiate between the north and the south node. It's just the nodal axis. So it doesn't matter whether it's the south node or the north node. The point is the Mars is conjunct the nodal axis. And so, yeah, we've got to watch who we hang out with. We could hang out with sort of aggressive, assertive people, for better or for worse. I do think we do need to consider the fact that it is conjunct the south node, and we sort of need to sort of bring the whole thing together and to say, well, we are hanging out with people we probably shouldn't be hanging out with people from the past, particularly as Mars is in its detriment. Mars does not work very well in Libra. People who, the reason they're so assertive, supposedly assertive, so aggressive, because they're actually weak, because they don't know how to assert themselves any other way except with physical strength. I mean, that's one way of looking at it. Mars is also, of course, it's where we put our energy. It's how, in general, and so if it's conjunct the south node, we could be putting a lot of energy into stuff which we should have grown out of. So that's Mars conjunct the south node, and in general, I don't think it's an easy conjunction. And there are other things going on today which do suggest a bit of confusion. Here's Mercury. Okay, 29, 24 Virgo. There's Jupiter. So actually, Mercury and Jupiter are 135 degrees apart. 3/8 of the cake, if you have 8 equal slices, 135 degrees. Mercury is a communication planet. Jupiter is a planet of exaggeration and excess. There's a danger that we talk too much. There's a danger that we think too much. There's a danger that external events just overwhelm us and we don't know what to think, and we're thinking about lots of different things and we just don't know what to make of it, and we could end up making mistakes. Mercury is supposed to be in Virgo. Mercury is in Virgo. It's working well in Virgo. It's quite analytical. But Jupiter comes along and confuses it. There's just information overload. Which way do we go? Which way do we expand? And perhaps we shouldn't. We should just relax. But there is a danger that we just use too much mental energy, because Mercury is aspecting the Saturn-Pluto midpoint. You see, there is a Saturn-Pluto midpoint, and so Mercury is making a semi-square to the Saturn-Pluto midpoint. It's also making a semi-square to Jupiter. So this whole thing is brought together. You can see this if you want to play with. If we do a 90-degree dial, which the German astrologers would be perhaps using. There's Mercury. You can see Mercury and Jupiter on the same axis. Remember, Mercury is 135 degrees from Jupiter, and there it is. There it is on there's Saturn, Pluto. Look at the symmetry. There's Mercury and Jupiter, and then they are on the Saturn-Pluto midpoint. So Mercury on the Saturn-Pluto midpoint. A huge amount of mental effort, desperately trying to make an impact, desperately trying to break through all the things holding us back, and not knowing when to stop. So, when we start communicating, when we start negotiating, whatever, we just keep going because we're so desperate to break through all the deadlocks. And I don't know. I think in the end we could just exhaust ourselves. So I'm not convinced that that's very positive. But I suppose you could say, Saturn Pluto is about the attempt to break down barriers, and Jupiter is on the Saturn-Pluto midpoint. Mercury is on the Saturn-Pluto midpoint. So it may be with the power of our intellect, the power of our words, we can finally smash through something that's holding us back. Yes, we can do that, but are we prepared to pay the price, at the very least, in terms of exhaustion? Now, I want to now do my forecast for the 12 signs. So, as usual, here are my forecasts for the 12 signs of the zodiac for today, which is Wednesday, October the 4th, 2023. Aries. Mars, your ruler, is in a difficult position, in its detriment in Libra, and exactly conjunct the South Node. You don't have much power, and any initiatives you take could be inappropriate and badly calculated. Yet you have got something to say which could make a big and favourable difference. But your timing has to be right. Taurus. You know how to look after your own interests, particularly when it comes to money. You can indeed express your needs with both power and enthusiasm, and you'll have a complete command of the facts. In the process, you might recognize that one particular person is behaving badly, and you might have to bring them to task. Gemini. Some Geminis are going to prioritize their life according to amusement value. That's not surprising, given the fact that most Geminis will do anything not to be bored. Yet the activities you find most appealing are the ones that could lead you astray. Better to pause for a moment or two and to ask yourself some serious questions. Cancer. The average Cancerian regards home and family as being very important, but that doesn't mean you should throw everything you've got into your domestic life, particularly today when Mars is conjunct the South Node. Sometimes the South Node is called the tail of the dragon. You could cause real disruption, perhaps because you overemphasize trivialities. Leo. You want to be heard, and in most cases you'll get an excellent reception. You'll have real conviction, and at the same time you'll be interesting and attractive. But don't say more than is necessary, because right now a few wrong words could damage your reputation. The people you meet seem confident, but in reality they're completely confused. Virgo. In terms of career, you can make a big impact. You'll have great ideas which you'll be able to bring down to earth thanks to your understanding of the details. But you do have to be careful of over-expenditure on things that you don't need. So think about, for example, recurring monthly payments and whether you're paying for something which is really not necessary anymore. Libra. It's a time when you need perspective. When you mustn't get sidetracked by the noise and chaos of everyday life. Things that seem important and worthy of an extreme reaction might just be a footnote. The proper thing to do is ask yourself broad questions and to put today's events into a wider context. Scorpio. The conjunction between Mars and the south node of the moon is now exact. This could be a time when you meet new people, or perhaps when you meet people from the past. But like yesterday, there's a danger that you get pulled in a direction that is at odds with your fundamental destiny. The power of your feelings can help you to avoid making mistakes. Sagittarius. It's a time when you can let someone else do most of the work, and you certainly don't have to be going out on a limb on other people's behalf. In the process, you might have to compromise and to spend some time listening, but I don't think you'll mind. Too much talking, too much thinking could exhaust you. Capricorn. You think you know where you're going, in the sense that your direction feels comfortable, but just because something is comfortable doesn't mean that it is right. And if you find yourself putting enormous energy into one thing, then consider the possibility that your energy is being focused in the wrong area. Aquarius, you want one thing, but actually you get something else. On the surface, this state of affairs doesn't seem satisfactory, but on reflection, it does make sense. You're being pushed in a particular direction, which in the end will help you to develop as a person. The stronger the belief, the stronger the danger. Pisces, now of all times, you need a solid, down-to-earth approach where you prioritize the things that you can touch with your bare hands. Don't get sidetracked by emotional tangents, and don't make things more complicated than they have to be. In relationships, concentrate on the similarities rather than the differences. So I'm now going to finish up by looking at the I Ching. So as always, I threw 3 coins in the air and I asked the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for people watching this video? So the first hexagram I got was hexagram 10, treading. Treading is about a situation where you have to be careful. The standard imagery used with treading is a tiger. It's like you've got a sleeping tiger, and the sleeping tiger's in your way, and you've got to walk past the tiger without getting bitten, or worse. And the key thing is you've got to watch where you put your feet. And the one thing you absolutely must not do is tread on the tiger's tail, because if you tread on the tiger's tail, you are in trouble, obviously. So think about what you're doing today. Think about the challenges that you're facing today. Think about a situation where you do have to be careful, because that situation is the tiger. Of course, this may be a situation you haven't yet come across, but I suspect you might come across it as the day progresses. So when you get to the tiger, you've got to be careful. Don't tread on the tiger's tail. Now, this hexagram is locked. Now, when I say locked, I mean that none of these lines are moving. That means we are stuck in this situation. Now, that probably means that the tiger actually won't bite us because, there's no movement here. I Ching is always about movement, and here there is no movement. So we're in an ongoing situation where we do have to tread carefully, where there is danger. If a moment of a split second of carelessness, could spoil everything. So think about what this situation is about. So as far as extra detail is concerned, I think we can say that what we need to do is we can't just hold back. This is a situation we do have to negotiate. We can't just turn our back on it, but we have to be very firm. We have to be very clear what we're doing. We have to be. It's like I don't know. When I was a child, I found escalators terrifying. Escalators are terrifying, aren't they? You have to put your foot on, putting your foot on these moving stairs. And the key thing when you're dealing with escalators is you've got to be resolute. You've got to just be very firm. If you kind of hesitate, then that's where the problems. When the problems come, you've got to say, I'm going to do it now. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it properly. And I'm going to watch what I'm doing. So if you can be resolute, but that means completely acknowledging that this is not a safe situation. This is a dangerous situation. But if you make mistakes, you could get hurt. So that is really something to be aware of. Now, treading, it does have a nuclear hexagram. I do look at the nuclear hexagram particularly if it's a locked hexagram. So the nuclear hexagram is when you kind of take the top and the bottom off the you take the top and the bottom off, and then you take the top three and the bottom three. So if we take the top three lines there, and then we take 1, 2, 3, and then we take the bottom three lines, then we can create a hexagram in the middle. So the nuclear hexagram is this. This is the underlying hexagram, and it's hexagram number 37. It's the family. And I mean, I think, with the family represents the group that we belong to. And if it can be literally our family, it can be close friends. I suppose if you're in Scotland, it could be your clan, whatever. And I think it's saying that, if we want to be able to negotiate this obstacle that we're dealing with, we need to make the most of our resources. So we don't just necessarily go ploughing in on our own. We can actually get help and advice from other people, and particularly those who are very close to us, people who know us well, people who are part of our group, and that could be family members. So if you've got an obstacle, don't be afraid to get advice from your family, or get advice from a close friend. Get advice from someone you're working with all the time. Don't get advice from a stranger. It's about getting advice from someone really close, because that is the best way of dealing with the obstacles suggested by this hexagram number 10, which is treading. So that's all I'm going to say for today. Sorry I was so brief, but I will talk to you again very soon. Thank you for listening.